Chosen one, God let them misjudge you because your next season will shock everyone around you. And before you dismiss that as another nice sentence people say when they do not understand how hard your life has been, hear this with your spirit open. This is not flattery. This is not fantasy. This is not a soft little message for a moment when you need comfort. This is a word for the hour you are living in right now, because the same people who formed opinions about you in your quiet season had no idea what heaven was doing behind the scenes. They watched you pull back and thought you were defeated. They saw you stop explaining and assumed you had nothing left to say. They saw doors close and imagined God had forgotten you. They saw the waiting, the silence, the strain, the pressure, the unreturned calls, the delayed answers, the bills that kept showing up, the responsibilities that did not get lighter, the weight you carried in private, and they came to a conclusion that was too small for what God was actually writing over your life. You have been living in a chapter where people only saw fragments. They saw the outside. They saw the routine. They saw you go to work, come home, sit in traffic, answer polite questions with tired smiles, show up at church, even when your heart felt bruised, keep your family together when nobody understood what it cost you. Make another grocery run, pay another bill, wait for another email, hope for another breakthrough, and hold yourself together in rooms where you were running on prayer and discipline alone. They saw movement, but they did not see the warfare. They saw composure, but they did not see the tears you wiped away before walking into another ordinary day. They saw you trying to keep things stable, but they did not see the nights when you sat in your kitchen after everybody had gone to bed, looking at the quiet, asking God if this waiting still had meaning. Chosen one. There are seasons when heaven allows misunderstanding because explanation would interrupt preparation. There are seasons when if God fully defended you in the eyes of people too early, they would applaud a version of you that was not finished yet. There are seasons when being misread is part of being hidden, and being hidden is part of being protected. Not every false judgment was an attack that needed a response. Some of it was a curtain. Some of it was divine mercy. Some of it was the hand of God keeping certain eyes away from what was still becoming holy and private. Because when the Lord is building something deep in you, He will often permit other people to call it weakness until the fruit appears. He will let them label your silence as passivity when it is really restraint. He will let them call your separation loneliness when it is really consecration. He will let them call your delays failure when it is really redirection. He will let them misunderstand your boundaries because the version of you they preferred had access to your energy without accountability. And that is where many of your recent battles have come from. Not just from obvious enemies, not just from people who openly disliked you. Some of the deepest pressure came from people who could not understand why you no longer moved like the old version of yourself, why you no longer rushed to prove your heart, why you stopped chasing approval, why you stopped giving immediate answers, why you became more discerning with your yes, why you started valuing peace over appearances, why you began stepping back from conversations that used to drain you, why you became harder to manipulate with guilt, panic urgency, or emotional confusion. They interpreted your growth as distance. They interpreted your healing as pride. They interpreted your caution as coldness. But the truth is that God has been teaching you how to protect the oil on your life. Chosen one. The oil always changes the rhythm of a person. It changes what you can entertain. It changes how long you stay in places that dishonor your spirit. It changes what you laugh at, what you agree with, what you carry, what you ignore, and what you walk away from. And when people are used to a version of you that over-explained, overextended, overgave, and overcompensated, your obedience will feel offensive to them, not because you became harsh, but because you became clear. Not because you became superior, but because you stopped being available for confusion. Not because you stopped loving, but because you stopped calling dysfunction loyalty. That shift confuses people who only knew how to access you through your wounds. There are people who misjudged you because they mistook your patience for weakness. They assumed you had no options because you stayed humble. They thought your kindness meant you were easy to overlook. They saw how slowly some things unfolded in your life and concluded that God must move faster for everybody except you. But God does not rush holy work just to satisfy impatient observers. The Lord is not threatened by being misunderstood. He does not panic when people form the wrong conclusion in the middle of the story. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows what He deposited in you. He knows the doors He closed to keep you from settling. He knows the relationships He interrupted to keep your heart from building a home in places He never ordained. He knows the jobs that passed you by because they would have starved your spirit while feeding your image. He knows the opportunities that looked perfect on paper but carried the wrong atmosphere. He knows the friendships that fell apart because you were no longer willing to stay small so other people could feel large. And if you have been asking why the process felt so personal, why the waiting cut so deep, why the losses touched your confidence, why some people drifted away right when you needed understanding, let this settle into your soul. You were not being discarded, you were being differentiated. God was marking a difference between what can go into your future and what cannot survive where He is taking you. There is a difference between being rejected and being rerouted. There is a difference between losing access and losing purpose. There is a difference between not being seen by people and not being seen by God. And that difference is everything. The culture around you keeps pushing quick outcomes, visible success, instant validation, and easy comparison. It teaches people to measure favor by speed, but many American believers are walking through real life right now carrying burdens nobody sees, working hard and still feeling behind, raising families and still wondering if they missed their moment, sitting in church on Sunday and silently carrying Monday fears about money, health, marriage, adult children, aging parents, loneliness, purpose, and whether they still have time for the promise God put in their heart years ago. So when your life does not move according to the world's timeline, it is easy for others to assume nothing significant is happening. But some of God's most powerful work happens where there is no audience, no applause, and no external evidence yet. Think about Joseph. The coat was visible. The dream was spoken. But the shaping happened in the pit, the prison, the years nobody celebrated. Think about David. The oil was poured in private, but the throne did not appear the next morning. Think about Moses. The call was real, but the wilderness still had to happen. Think about Ruth. Loss came first. Loyalty came next. Favor unfolded later. Think about Mary. The word from heaven was holy, but it still had to survive misunderstanding. Scripture is full of people whose obedience looked strange before it looked wise. Their lives made less sense in the middle than they did in the end, and you chosen one are somewhere in the middle of a story that will make much more sense from the other side. The enemy knows that if he cannot stop what God has ordained, he will try to exhaust your perspective before it becomes visible. He will send thoughts like, maybe they were right about you. Maybe you really missed it. Maybe you waited too long. Maybe your best years are behind you. Maybe what once felt like calling was only wishful thinking. Maybe if God were truly with you, it would not have taken this long. Those thoughts do not come to reveal truth. They come to distort timing. They come to make you interpret process as abandonment. They come to make you hurry into what looks available because what is ordained still requires faith. But I need you to hear this clearly. Delay is not denial when God is involved. Sometimes delay is the mercy that keeps you from attaching your hope to the wrong thing. Sometimes delay is where your character catches up to your prayer. Sometimes delay is how God breaks your addiction to human confirmation. Sometimes delay is how He shows you that your source is not people, not titles, not status, not attention, not the approval of a family member who still does not understand you, not the phone call you have been waiting for, not the one opportunity you thought had to work out. Sometimes delay is where God teaches you that even when your world feels uncertain, He is still stable. Many people around you only understand visible blessing. They understand a promotion, a wedding, a house, a public win, a financial leap, a clean announcement, a dramatic testimony. They know how to celebrate outcomes, but they do not always know how to recognize spiritual development. They do not know what it means when a person becomes harder to provoke, slower to speak from pain, less interested in pleasing every room, more rooted in scripture, more careful with peace, more discerning with access, more settled in truth, and less willing to trade calling for comfort. But heaven sees that. Heaven counts that. Heaven honors that. And that quiet maturity in you is one of the clearest signs that your next season is already forming. Chosen one, there is a reason this message is pressing on your spirit. You have entered a transition where what God has been doing inwardly is about to start showing outwardly. Not all at once, not in a way that feeds pride, not in a way that makes you worship the outcome, but in a way that shocks the people who thought they had already figured you out. Because there are people who made permanent conclusions from temporary seasons. They saw your wilderness and called it your identity. They saw your grief and called it your future. They saw your hesitation and called it incompetence. They saw your isolation and called it failure. They saw you heal slowly and called it weakness. But they were reading a draft while God was still writing revelation. Your next season is not just about blessing, it is about reversal. It is about God bringing clarity where people used assumption. It is about fruit speaking where you were once pressured to defend yourself. It is about peace becoming visible on you. It is about doors opening that you do not have to force. It is about your life carrying a kind of weight that does not come from striving. It is about stability where there used to be scramble. It is about divine timing, stepping into places where you used to feel late. It is about the Lord making it unmistakably clear that what was delayed was not dead, it was protected. Some of you have been carrying disappointment from a door that did not open when you begged God for it. A relationship you wanted to work, a ministry opportunity you thought would confirm your purpose, a move that fell through, a job that never called back, a family conversation that did not heal the way you hoped, an adult child who still feels distant, a marriage that left you praying in separate rooms, a church space where you expected support but found politics instead, a financial strain that made you question whether your obedience was costing too much, and what made it worse was watching other people assume your silence meant you had no testimony. But heaven does not measure testimony only by what has already resolved. Sometimes the testimony is that you stayed faithful while nothing around you looked finished. You kept showing up. You kept praying. You kept tithing when it would have been easier to harden your heart. You kept forgiving even when your emotions lagged behind your decision. You kept choosing integrity when compromise looked more profitable. You kept reading the Word when you did not feel dramatic spiritual emotion. You kept trusting God in regular American life, not in a retreat moment, not in some perfect mountaintop atmosphere, but in traffic at the doctor's office, in the break room, at the kitchen table, in court paperwork, during another night of interrupted sleep, in the tension of unanswered questions, in the plainness of a routine that nobody claps for. That matters, that counts. That is not small in the sight of God. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." Not maybe, not if the right people finally understand. Not if your timeline gets easier first. In due season. There is a season attached to obedience. There is a harvest attached to perseverance. There is fruit attached to staying with God long enough for His work to mature. And many of the people who misjudged you did so because they were looking for instant fruit from seeds that were still under the ground. They did not understand root systems. They did not understand process. They did not understand that some things look quiet only because they are going deep. You have been going deep, chosen one, deeper in discernment, deeper in dependency on God, deeper in your understanding of what peace costs, deeper in recognizing patterns that once trapped you, deeper in seeing what is holy and what is only familiar, deeper in knowing the difference between being needed and being assigned, deeper in learning that being chosen does not always feel glamorous. Sometimes it feels like being misunderstood in the exact places where you wanted to be celebrated. Sometimes it feels like being set apart when you wished you could simply blend in. Sometimes it feels like watching people misread your intentions while God tells you to stay still. But being chosen has never meant being instantly understood. It means being aligned. And this is where some people around you are about to be surprised. Because they expected your story, to stay stuck in the chapter where they last understood you. They expected you to keep operating from the wounds they benefited from. They expected you to keep tolerating environments that kept you anxious. They expected you to keep chasing connection at the expense of conviction. They expected you to keep presenting the most manageable version of yourself. But the Lord has been changing your inner architecture. He has been rebuilding your confidence on truth instead of feedback. He has been healing your identity at the root. He has been teaching you to stop overvaluing the opinions of people who were never qualified to interpret your calling. Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. All things. The confusion, the grief, the delay, the embarrassment, the closed doors, the lonely weekends, the invisible labor, the prayers you thought were too small to matter, the moments when you had to leave a conversation and go sit in your car just to breathe and ask God for grace, the times you looked strong in public and had to ask heaven for strength in private, the seasons when you felt like your life was being reduced instead of expanded. All things. God is not just using your victories, he is also using the parts of your story you would have skipped if it were up to you. The people who misjudged you did not know that your reduction was refinement. They did not know your quiet was training. They did not know your pullback was protection. They did not know your unanswered season was teaching you how to hear God without needing constant external reassurance. They did not know the pressure was producing a sturdier faith. They did not know the hidden season was preparing you to carry public grace without being destroyed by public attention. And that matters because what comes next in your life needs a stronger vessel than the one you had before. A lot of people pray for increase, but not everybody is ready for what increase exposes. Increase reveals whether you have peace or only excitement. Increase reveals whether your identity is rooted in God or in applause. Increase reveals whether you can carry favor without becoming fragile around criticism. Increase reveals whether you can walk through open doors without dragging unhealed patterns into them. That is why God has been so intentional with your process. He is not trying to make you miserable. He is trying to make you ready. Chosen one. Some of what looked like loss was God removing the need to be easily explained. Some of what looked like isolation was God teaching you not to panic when you are not understood. Some of what looked like inconvenience was God forcing you off a path you had outgrown. Some of what looked like rejection was actually a mercy that kept your future from being built on unstable agreements. You thought you were losing momentum, but in reality, God was breaking false alignment. And false alignment always feels painful when it snaps because you had already imagined a future around it. There are many believers in America right now who know exactly what that feels like. You build hopes around a person, a plan, a church community, a business dream, a family restoration, a timetable you think God should honor, and when it shifts, it feels like the ground moved under your feet. Then people around you start asking questions with that tone, that subtle disbelief, that passive pressure, that look that says, I thought by now you would have figured it out. And you feel the temptation to perform peace instead of actually fighting for it. But God did not call you to perform peace. He called you to possess it. He did not call you to manage everybody's perception. He called you to walk with him. Isaiah 55 says God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts, and his ways higher than our ways. That sounds beautiful until his ways interrupt your plans. Then it becomes a test of trust. Will you still call him good when his timing embarrasses your expectations? Will you still follow him when your obedience makes less sense to the people around you? Will you still believe him when the evidence is not public yet? That is where many of you have been living, and heaven has seen every quiet yes you gave in that place. Your next season is going to shock some people because it will not match the story they wrote about you. They thought they knew the ceiling on your life because they measured you by your current circumstances. But God measures by calling. They measured by what they saw you surviving. God measures by what he placed in you before the foundation of the world. They measured by how quiet your chapter looked. God measures by how full of purpose it is. They measured by what had not manifested yet. God measures by what has already been spoken in heaven. This next season may look like unexpected restoration in places you thought were gone for good. It may look like a fresh peace in your home after years of strain. It may look like work opening up in ways that fit your calling instead of just draining your energy. It may look like clarity after confusion, a holy relationship after compromise, provision after a long financial squeeze, community after isolation, courage after years of second guessing confidence after seasons of shrinking. It may not arrive in one dramatic movie scene. Sometimes God shocks people with consistency, with steadiness, with mature joy, with a life that finally matches the quiet work He has been doing for years. But make no mistake, it will be visible. You are entering days where what once required constant effort will begin to carry grace. You are entering days where discernment will save you time. You are entering days where certain opportunities will find you because your spirit is finally aligned enough to recognize them. You are entering days where you will stop trying to explain why you are different and simply walk in what God has given you. You are entering days where the same people who were unsure about you will not know how to interpret the favor on your life because it will not look like self-promotion. It will look like peacetiming, wisdom, and fruit. And fruit has a way of ending arguments. That is one of the deepest truths in this message. God let them misjudge you because fruit speaks with a cleaner authority than wounded explanations ever could. If He had forced them to understand you too soon, they would have applauded your words without respecting your process. But when fruit appears, it carries weight. When peace becomes visible, it carries witness. When your life becomes more settled, more clear, more fruitful, more healed, more focused, more grounded. In truth, people do not need long speeches. They can see that God has been present. And yet, this is not about proving something to them. It is about freeing you from the need to be correctly interpreted by everybody. That need is exhausting. That need keeps many believers spiritually stuck because they are constantly checking whether people understand their heart. Chosen one, let God be the keeper of your reputation. Let Him be the one who vindicates what He authored. Let Him defend what He anointed. Let Him silence what He did not ordain. Your assignment is not to force clarity in every room. Your assignment is to stay in alignment. Psalm 23 says, He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Notice that the shepherd leads. The sheep do not map the whole journey first. They follow. And some of you have been frustrated because the shepherd has led you through places that did not feel impressive. Still, waters are not dramatic. Restoration is often slow. Righteous paths can look ordinary. But the point is that He leads. And if He leads, then the path is not random, even when it is quiet. You are not behind chosen one. You are being led. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. You are not overlooked in heaven because you feel overlooked on earth. You are not disqualified because the chapter took longer than expected. You are not weak because you needed more time to heal than people thought you should. You are not failing because God required you to unlearn false peace before He entrusted you with true peace. You are not too late. You are in process. For some of you, this message is reaching you after a long stretch of emotional fatigue. You have been strong for so long that people assume strength costs you nothing. You have been dependable for so long that others stopped noticing your need for care. You have been calm for so long that people forgot calm can coexist with deep internal battles. You have been faithful for so long that people started treating your perseverance like a personality trait instead of recognizing it as a spiritual victory. But God has seen the whole picture. He has seen the private prayers. He has seen the moments you almost gave up and did not. He has seen the restraint it took not to send that text, not to reopen that door, not to defend yourself in that moment, not to react from the wound. He has seen the humility it took to keep obeying without visible reward. And because He has seen it, He is not going to waste it. Nothing submitted to God is ever wasted. No tear, no prayer, no act of obedience, no fasting season, no lonely yes, no decision to forgive, No choice to stay soft before the Lord after life gave you reasons to harden. Nothing. He gathers what you thought disappeared. He stores what you thought was lost. He redeems what you thought had already passed you by. That is what redemption does. It reaches into what looked finished and says, I am not done speaking here. So do not despise the chapter you are coming out of. Do not curse the very season that trained your spirit. Do not reduce the hidden years to nothing just because they were not publicly impressive. The hidden years taught you how to hear God over noise. They taught you how to live without constant validation. They taught you how to endure long stretches where your only evidence was Scripture. They taught you how to survive ordinary life with unusual faith. They taught you how to carry longing without becoming bitter. They taught you how to surrender what you could not control. They taught you how to stop chasing every invitation and wait for assignment. They taught you that your identity does not collapse just because somebody misreads your heart. Now hear this part with authority. The chapter ahead of you is not going to be sustained by panic. It is not going to be built by proving. It is not going to be entered through begging. It is going to be entered through alignment, obedience, and holy confidence. The same God who kept you in the hidden place knows exactly when to bring visibility. The same God who let them misjudge you knows exactly when to let truth become evident. The same God who allowed the process knows exactly when the fruit is ready to appear. And when it does, you will not have to become arrogant to carry it. You will not have to become loud to prove it. You will not have to throw your testimony in anybody's face. There will be a settled strength on you, a steadiness, a gravity, a peace that feels different. Some people will look at your life and not know how to explain the shift, but they will sense it. They will sense that you are no longer striving from the same place. They will sense that your no has become clearer, your yes more intentional, your joy less fragile, your faith less dependent on visible reassurance, your spirit less available for chaos. That is what maturity looks like when God has had room to work. Chosen one, this is your reminder that heaven is not asking you to be understood by everyone. It is asking you to trust the one who understands completely. It is not asking you to rehearse your pain for every curious person. It is asking you to let healing become deeper than your need to explain. It is not asking you to chase every person who pulled away. It is asking you to walk where there is grace. It is not asking you to panic about the opinions that were formed in your wilderness. It is asking you to prepare for the fruit that will grow after it. James 1 says to count it all joy when you face various trials because the testing of your faith produces endurance. That verse is not cheerful because trials are pleasant. It is powerful because endurance creates capacity, and capacity is what your next season requires. The blessing coming to you is not shallow. The favor coming to you is not decorative. The opportunity coming to you is not random. The peace coming to you is not temporary. It has weight. It has purpose. It has assignment attached to it. That is why the preparation has been so exact. So if people misjudged you, let them. If they read your hidden season the wrong way, let them. If they thought your silence meant the absence of a future, let them. If they assumed your boundaries were bitterness, let them. If they thought your slow process meant God was not with you, let them. Their misunderstanding cannot cancel what heaven has spoken. Their assumptions cannot erase what God planted. Their timeline cannot control your due season. What the Lord has for you does not need public permission to unfold. Lift your head, chosen one. Not in pride, but in remembrance. Remember who kept you. Remember who fed you in the wilderness. Remember who closed doors you would have forced to open in your pain. Remember who carried you through nights you never thought you would survive. Remember who steadied your mind when anxiety tried to write your future for you. Remember who preserved your faith when disappointment would have been enough to make many people quit. Remember who kept your heart tender. Remember who kept your calling alive underneath all the ordinary demands of life. That same God is still writing. And now make this your declaration. Say it in your spirit even before you see the full evidence. God was not absent in my hidden season. He was shaping me. God was not ignoring my tears. He was storing them. God was not punishing me through delay. He was protecting my future. God did not let them misjudge me because He forgot me. He let them misjudge me because the story was not finished, and what He is about to do will speak more loudly than anything I could have explained. Chosen one, your next season will shock everyone around you, not because you became somebody else, but because the person God was forming in secret is finally about to become visible. Stay close to Him. Stay in the Word. Stay soft in heart and firm in truth. Stay faithful in the ordinary. Stay obedient in the quiet. Stay surrendered when you do not have the full map, because the same Lord who authored your hidden chapter is the one opening the next one. And when He turns the page, no person who misread your past will be able to stop what heaven has decided about your future.